Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the third episode of Sunday Design Rants with me, Sliced Lime. This is the series where I use my 10 years of game developer experience to analyze and discuss games old and new alike. Last week I didn't quite manage to complete a rant, and I apologize for that. So to make up for that, this week we're taking on the big demon, Fallout 4. Let me preface this by saying that this piece is going to contain some minor spoilers for the first few quests in the game, something I can't avoid doing in order to properly discuss some of the design choices. I will be splitting this into 3 different segments after this short introduction: the good, the bad, and the ugly. I think you can figure out approximately how that will work, so let's get into it. So, Fallout. It is, in a word, unique. The Fallout world is, in my view, one of the best, if not the best, fictional game worlds ever created. The light-hearted post-apocalyptic weirdness combined with a brilliantly chosen futuristic world stuck in a 1940s culture forms a great basis for endless exploration, both of an amazing world but also of narrative. There are so many nuances on top of that are fantastic. Vault-Tec with a whole vault program which is not what it seemed to be. I still remember having a mind-blown moment when I realized what it was all about. Stuff like the Tranquility Lane section of Fallout 3, where the whole vault is in a simulated world, or even the cryo-freeze of Fallout 4 are absolute delights of twisted mental games. Now Fallout 4, for the first time, lets players catch a glimpse of the world before the nukes fell. That is a really cool section, and although it's over pretty quickly and very limited in its possibilities, having it there still adds something really different to the game. Let's step back for a moment and talk about the history of Fallout. The initial Fallout games, Fallout and Fallout 2, released in the 90s, were obviously very different. When Bethesda bought the right to Fallout and started making a 3D version of it, I think with good reason, a lot of fans were worried. And although a lot of people were upset about how Fallout 3 turned out, I think they actually managed to translate it quite well. Look at Fallout 3 compared to Fallout 1 and 2. The special system of character traits is there. The skill system is there, the perks are there, the conversation system is pretty much the same, caravans are there, even combat seems somewhat familiar despite being a first-person shooter because of VATS. Most importantly, it still felt so much like that brilliant Fallout world. And so as we come back to Fallout 4, I am once again thrilled to be able to enter the world of Fallout, and Fallout 4 draws me in and keeps me wanting more. It also doesn't hurt that the very thing greeting the player when starting the game is an amazing new soundtrack that fits right in. At the same time, I get the feeling that something is missing, almost like the very best thing about Fallout 4 being that it's still Fallout. And the fact that it still lets me into that brilliant world kind of makes up for a lot of other problems. Let's start with the narrative. In all of the previous Fallout game, the world has simply been an alternate reality. For no explicit reason, the world is stuck in a culture of early big band and jazz music playing on black and white TV sets, but also power armor and laser rifles. The intro videos have always started with a juxtaposition of the culture and amazing futuristic vision with the broken world that came to be. What caused that? What world is this? That has always been an interesting mystery. One that made the world an interesting place to explore and gave a feeling that there was always another clue to be found. Now in the very intro video to Fallout 4, Bethesda smacks you in the face with a fully spelled out description of this alternate reality. This turns the intro not into the mysterious but surprising look into a torn world that the previous intros have all been, but rather into an encyclopedia-like alternative history lesson spelling out exactly how this world came to be. Like players could not be trusted with an imagination, needed to have their hands held, and to have everything spelled out in detail. And that does take away some of the magic. Sometimes, less really is more. Looking at the more personal narrative of the game, it's really all about a parent and their son. The problem with that is that the intro is too short to have the player form any kind of bond with the child, and the protagonist, while supposedly on a quest to find the child, instead heads into the world as a wannabe hero, gladly accepting to help person after person in need, more often than not with dialogues that don't even feature an option to ask about your missing son. Our protagonist, by choice of the game rather than the player, seems to not really care about the child, and that leads us inevitably to a discussion of the dialogues. The dialogue system that has been the centerpiece of all the previous games is gone, replaced with a simplified system of exactly 4 options for almost any question, which very frequently come up as yes, no, maybe, and sarcastic. This is almost universally called a streamlining of the system, but honestly, it's a dumbing down of the system. With the addition of voiceovers for the protagonist, this system is an obvious attempt at emulating BioWare's Mass Effect and Dragon Age dialogue wheels. Where Mass Effect always made me feel like I knew roughly what my character was about to say, Fallout completely fails to make me feel connected to my character. I think part of this is that Mass Effect makes no attempt at restricting the number of options to a specific number, and part of it is that there's a better sense of connection with the context I'm in. This becomes very clear when my character, who has become the leader of a faction, gets a dialogue option that simply states the name of the faction. My expectation then is that my character will tell the dialogue partner that we, the faction, will deal with the problem at hand. Instead, I blurt out a question about what this faction is, like I've never heard about it before. And it's not just a few mistakes. Nearly every conversation makes me feel disconnected with my character, like I'm playing a guessing game rather than choosing what to do. Choice, then, which has always been at the very centerpiece of Fallout games, comes out as lacking, and that is a problem. Simply put, in streamlining the game, Bethesda appear to have taken most RPG aspects out of the RPG. The skills are gone, replaced by a simplified perk system. The karma system is gone, replaced with nothing much at all, really. Weapon conditions have been removed, replaced by a modding system requiring you to gather all the junk in the entire wasteland. Where previous Fallout games tended to have many ways of solving a particular quest, Fallout 4 has no room among yes, no, maybe sarcastic for a skill check, and even if it did, there aren't any skills anymore, so never mind that. The End Result is more a straight first-person shooter game, with VATS and a quest system, than an RPG. And for no apparent reason, on top of that they added a Sims-like system of building towns with settlers to keep happy. All of those factors come together with the inclusion of the Radiant quest engine from Skyrim that keeps generating fetch or kill quests for you, with no interesting choices at all and a never-ending line of menial tasks where the player is never told that these tasks are uninteresting filler quests and trying to complete the quest line is futile. Like I mentioned before, I've liked Fallout 4 this far, and I will doubtlessly play countless hours more. But I do think I like it more for the simple fact that it lets me immerse myself in the amazing world of Fallout once more, than for what the game itself actually is. What I wanted was a role-playing game with lots of choice, not a murder simulation where my character says unexpected things, and with a Sims component bolted onto the side. I began both the good and the bad sections with the narrative and the world, so it seems fitting that we begin the ugly section with that as well. Fallout, with all its crazy messed up weirdness, has always been a fairly pure, post-apocalyptic world of science fiction. Everything from the rad roaches to the super mutants have always been grounded in the reality of the atomic wipeout and, well, Fallout. Now what this game needed was not in any way magic. It did not need a truth-sayer, and it certainly didn't need it as the main lead of the main quest of the game. Rather than a reasonable explanation for the main questline of the game, your chase for the child that you don't really care about is handled through a crazy lady seeing things while on drugs that you randomly run into. I'm not kidding. It's a blight on what was already a bad storyline to introduce the game, a cheap way to point you towards a certain location, but also one that makes the entire game seem like a series of either very random events, or one that requires some form of magic. And the Fallout world is not one that has room for magic. And speaking about ugly, we have to talk about the game in its rawest, most technical form. It is a very pretty game when compared to Fallout 3 or Fallout New Vegas. But that's a very odd comparison. A more true comparison would be to a more recent RPG, like Dragon Age Inquisition or The Witcher 3. And I'm sorry, but that comparison really doesn't look good on Fallout's part. I can see an argument for focusing more on functionality and scale than on graphics and fixing glitches. And that'd be true in a way that many gamers often fail to understand. Why are massively open games so buggy? Think of something like the Armed Assault series, infamous for releasing buggy games, but also the most massively open military simulation around. In any development there's always a choice and a never-ending series of bugs. For each of those bugs you choose to fix, you also choose not to implement some other cool feature. You have to decide whether it's more important to fix that one floating stone, or to add that one additional gun. I respect Bethesda for sticking with scale as an important feature of the game, worthy of focus over some other problems. But some of the problems of Fallout 4 go way beyond simple bugs to really poor design choices. Take the user interface for instance. Getting out of the workshop interface happens on escape. Getting out of VATS or the Pip-Boy interface happens on tab. But getting out of certain interfaces also brings up a confirmation dialog where you're expected to hit enter rather than tab. The whole thing just seems like no one spent any time thinking about how to make it. The pure randomness of the interface leaves players in the dark. How to scroll the perk chart, how to leave a power armor, how to turn on the Pip-Boy light, how to assign a settler to a task, how to holster your weapon, how to connect workshops between different settlements. There are so many things in this game where the answer to how it works can only be found on Google rather than in the game. Modders have already started fixing the most obvious flaws of the game, like a mod that adapts shadows to keep performance up, or one that gets rid of the terrible dialogue interface in favor of showing the actual lines your character will say. That helps, but they won't ever address the core problem of this game. The spirit of Fallout, that survived so well from the old games into Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas, I feel, is no longer there. Fallout 4 removes so many of the core features that it's no longer the same style of game. On the surface, many of the elements of Fallout 3 are still there, but in the way the game plays, the criticism of Skyrim with guns rings true. And for a game that is uniquely allowed to let me back into my favorite post-apocalypse, that is a very sad state of affairs. There is of course much more to say, but I think we've reached the limits of what one rant can hold. There is a deeply rooted love for Fallout in the gaming community, and it is one game that doesn't need to streamline away its deep systems in favor of accessibility in a way that many other games do to hit the mass market. Fallout, then, can afford to stay Fallout. Please let me know in the comments what you think about Fallout 4 and about this rant. Thank you for listening. My name is Sliced Lime, and I'm out. I'll see you in the next video, and in another rant next Sunday.